You are listening to River West Radio on WXR WLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. Support for this program comes from Collectivo Coffee, dedicated to keeping Milwaukee's bike riding community rolling with bike pumps available for use in all Collectivo cafes. More info is available in cafes and at collectivocoffee.com. Do you want to support your community radio station? Here's your chance. From now until December 30th, River West Radio is participating in a nationwide fundraising effort for community broadcasters called Give Big to My Station. Your tax-deductible gift will help River West Radio continue to provide a platform for alternative and marginalized voices. Go to riverwestradio.com and click Give Big to My Station to make a one-time donation. And thanks for listening. Welcome to Cinema Fireside. If you're listening live, it is a very unseasonably warm evening in Milwaukee. We got Gabe calling in. Gabe, thank you so much for your dedication, your perseverance, your dexterity, and all things challenging, and coming through day after day, week after week, month after month, and year after year. Great stuff. Again, if you're listening live in tonight in Milwaukee, it's unseasonably warm. It's like it's warm. It's early December, and we've got a nice breeze going. So it's I hear it might drop, get colder tomorrow. We'll see. Who cares? Dress warm, and you're going to be A-okay. It's the winter season, December. It kicked off really well on Saturday with some good reading Friday's paper, the New York Times, reading the reviews, then going to the holiday book talk at the Shorewood Library, and I was doing, as usual, my script writing, so something actually productive was being accomplished. It just was great. It was in the community room with the large windows where you could see the Skyliner apartment right across the street. Just a fantastic view and very good vibes. A lot of people were there. Ended up at a coffee shop along the lake and just continued to write. It was packed. I made do up against a brick wall, then a window, then at the master bar table where you can see everything, and just kept going. So that was good. And I want to thank the listeners for listening in, making this show possible by keeping a robust symbiosis alive. So that's great stuff. Film-wise, I saw 20th Century Women and Willie Dynamite. And both interesting films in their own right. 20th Century Women had that, you're watching it and you realize, obviously, this has all been done before. It has that inherent sense of manifest destiny allied with the music that has that gravitational pull towards the end right from the beginning. And that's the parallelity is also found visually with the slow zooms in, signifying that slow gravitational pull to the end of the film itself. So it's very epic in its tonality. And so, but if it's like one of your first times seeing films like that, it'll be all new, this kind of like predetermined realm that you're immediately thrust into. A very good film, a solid film with that particular take on it. And then Willie Dynamite, blaxploitation flick, early 70s, very odd choice in acting style. It's as if it's overacting, and I don't understand what the conceit in doing that is. Actually, the two leads do it, and for an hour and a half, it just comes off as fairly bizarre. There's great 70s colors in it, great 70s stylizations, and some decent 70s music. I think it was obviously made for the film, and what's interesting about that is you can have a list of hundreds of these songs from the 70s made for these films, and it's very kind of like melancholic, life-affirming, life-reflective styles. It's very interesting. It'd be interesting to have a list of a few hundred of those songs allied with the films that they come from, and actually to have them, recorded and just to trip out on all of that stuff. So that's interesting. Yeah, all worthwhile. I operate with a sense of discretion. I don't take chances with films. Each viewing must have its inherent reward. Some are not going to be from the top of the charts, but it's a necessity. It's an academic, scholarly necessity to see these films, and you do it. And that's just what keeps the scholarship going. So, yeah, that's a fairly diverse offering between 20th Century Women and Willie Dynamite. And when Stephen King came to town, we each got a copy of his and his son Owen's book, Sleeping Beauties, about a 700-page tome. I'm on page 335 because I dutifully read about 4 or 5 pages a morning, and that's how I've gotten this far since September 30th. Missed some days, but in general, hit that book on a pretty regular basis. What else do we have here? Oh, what playwrights talk about when they talk about writing. A great interview book that just came out, and just having a very inspirational time reading that. And I want to thank a dear colleague for hooking me up with that book. And I'm also reading, I actually got this from the Shorewood Library for $1, a great new conditioned book on the Bergman Project, which was a trilogy of plays he did in the early 80s, Scenes from a Marriage, Miss Julie, and The Doll's House, one from Ibsen, one from Strindberg, and one an original work. I mean, they're all, adapted loosely and reconfigured, but Scenes from a Marriage is it has a truly original source. So it's just in these December days, these November days, it's just a blast reading that book, and the angst between men and women, and all of the flawed strategies that are enacted, which only further embellish a doomed domestic landscape. So it's great stuff. I mean, just that's what it's actually all about. So what a blast. What else do we have? Oh, Christmas reading. In years past, I've hit, let's see, Ann Beattie's Chilly Scenes of Winter, Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and it's going to Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. This is all from memory. So I know a lot of people on the radio will bring the list, do a fair amount of prefatory work, and I just jot some things down quick and then go off that and have to tempt the memory into action. So what I am looking forward to read this year for winter is Henry James, and it is, I believe, A Winter or a Christmas in New England. So yes, I have Henry James lined up and ready to roll. So Saturday was really the kickoff for the Christmas season. Lots of writing, holiday book talk, book bobs, and ended up watching the Shorewood tree lighting by Pick and Save. So that was decent to hang out there, and then went to a Christmas party where I went straight for the room that was filled with food, and no small talk, went right for that, got that all appropriated. Zav, my man, have a good night. You're a good man and a good time. And Zav LaPlay has left the house. He is the master and commander of this whole enterprise, and we thank him dearly for that. So yes. Big food. Sat there, ate it, and just had the paper, read a large article on Edvard Munch. It was in Friday's arts section. I figured that was the time that I had to catch up with it. I was reading actually the review on, not Lady Bird. That came out last week. The Disaster Artist, which is actually a great book. It was like All the President's Men. It was just compelling from beginning to end, and you just got sucked into its gravitational pull of literary intrigue. So The Disaster Artist, Tommy Wiseau. I actually ran into the dude at the Oriental Theater. We actually played football, and he is who he is. It's quite amazing. Gabe, we have not forgotten about you. We'll get to you in a figurative minute, my man, which is 2 to 3 in the literal world. So that's going to be really, really cool to see is a Disaster Artist. And then, of course, the big Hollywood film will be The Post on the release of the Pentagon Papers. And that is going to be fun to see that film. That's the one big Hollywood film that I look forward to is The Post, and going to hit the Disaster Artist for sure. And like I said, great book. It was what a. I had only seen The Room recently, and saw that, and read the making of it, and now is the fictive account. And speaking of which, Mr. James Franco, he's a great writer, and he he plays Tommy Wiseau, and his brother plays Greg. I'll maybe mess up the name, Sestero or so. Gabe can correct me, of course. And well, what the heck was I going to say? So, so at the Whitefish Bay Library in their book nook for $2, $1 or $2, I picked up a great, perfect condition of a James Franco's book, which I don't have in front of me, so I don't know the title, but just a very forthright, fascinating read. And I was out in L.A. one time. I picked up there's a free, pretty thick magazine out there, and it actually had some of Franco's writing in it, so that was a good find as well. But so that's that. Gabe, dude, my man, how are you?
I'm doing good, Mark.
You have the patience of a saint, and the intelligentsia of a hard-won scholar. So welcome to your world, Gabe.
Thank you, Mark. That's great stuff. This couldn't be more true. Yeah, what a life of movies. Life goes on. You find out that you got to check your credit score. You got to find out that sometimes you got to file police reports against people. Sometimes you got to.
You got to do a lot, is what you're saying.
You just, some days are just, and some days are supposed to be your day off, and it's nothing from the minute go. No time for leisure or relaxation, no time for movie stuff, no time for even the things that I used to think were absolute necessities for my time off, my days off. Now that I'm in a serious relationship, it is a serious relationship, and I take it serious, and I respect it. I respect the person that I live with. I have a lot more respect for people than I used to in the past.
Nice.
The time I spend on my day off, it's just like what my priorities are so completely different from what they were 9 months ago, a year ago, 3 years ago, a couple of years ago.
You're in the throes of evolution, my man.
I hope so. It seems that way, but it definitely feels a lot better than. It's not necessarily that I'm in a better place. It's just my priorities are different, and I can give more time to those priorities. I can stay more true, and I have a better outcome from the priorities. The reward from my list of priorities that I've had in the past hasn't always, the pros and the cons haven't always evened out. In fact, the con list is oftentimes bigger. So, there's a lot of days where it's like, helping my mom out with this, helping my sister out with that, helping family out with this, going over here, helping someone out with this, helping someone out with that. It's like at the end of the day, there's not as many movies that get watched. There's not as much writing that gets done. Usually there's no writing that gets done anymore. There's no this, there's no that. But in the end, the amount of time, the this versus that of the lifestyle spent by myself, where it is, the things that I truly love doing that truly don't require other people have this endless amount of time that you can give to them, and it's never going to be enough for me, for the insatiable part of like, there's never going to be enough movies to watch. There's never going to be a point where I'm like, I've seen enough. Today I could stop and I could say, and in theory, I could write a book about the films that I've seen and write a book about film theory, about, you know, the story of cinema, and I'd be fine, but I don't want to be done. I love watching films. I love watching the state of contemporary cinema, and I love continuing to study classic cinema. But, you know, like you were saying, Mark, about 20th century women, which is such a great example of the story of cinema right there. That, by the way, that movie is available to stream on Amazon Prime for anyone that has that service. 20th Century Women is a very classy example of a new school take on an old school film. That's a very almost like, I'm trying to think of the type of film. It has an almost sort of 70s sort of American film take on characters, but the way that it's made in this very contemporary, like you said, Mark, predictable, cued way where the producer and the director seem to have like reinforced each other with these cues that even really well-made movies that have like these strong, intelligent screenplays that have like mature adult character development and like thought out ideas and are, you know, like root for the smaller guys and aren't just movies about people in capes and things blowing up, or, you know, they're not movies for children and they're not about teenagers and made in a teenagery kind of way. Or they're not predictable movies about the same predictable things. But ultimately, even those kinds of movies fall into these predictable rhythms where you have the cues for music, you have the same type of shooting structure, you have the same type of lighting, a familiar type of realistic costume design, a particular style of very learned acting. Annette Bening is a world-class, brilliant actress. She has a way of both being extremely expressive with her emotions, almost like her, Julianne Moore, Kate Winslet. They're both very, very capable in their realism, and they also have this sort of believable undercurrent of understatedness. Meryl Streep is obviously the master of that, where she can impersonate someone with physical characteristics, but she needs to do very little physically to convince you, where it's like it's not over the top, it's not theatrical, and it's not like this loofy, goofy, you know, like all like eyebrows moving, faces moving, things moving. It's the fact that she can convey the sense of realism even through the shed of technology that is a camera and a film and digital technology and what have you. Film performance is actually it's the more I've been thinking about it over the past week, which it has been a thought in my mind about this idea of, and I bring it up on the show often. And Mark, you talk about this as well. We've had private conversations about this idea of the public, like the consensus of good acting, bad acting, natural acting, amateur acting, the other acting, mainstream acting, theater acting, stage acting, Victorian acting, community theater acting, independent film acting. You'll see these types of repetitious behavior, these styles. And then some of that stuff goes out the window because sometimes some people are extremely academically trained and sometimes people just have a natural gift. But who decides whether they're good or bad? That's obviously subjective. But sometimes people just have that innate ability where they have experience, they have a story, they can believe the character, or they are the character already. The actor simply is doing nothing, and it conveys a realism, it conveys a depth, it conveys this phony, and to be honest, it seems like it's a phoniness. It's just this ability to keep up a guise, a magician's act. David Thompson's a masterful book called Why Acting Matters, which is part of the Yale.
Dude, my man, first of all, thank you for bringing that up because I was looking through that. I'm going to get that at the library. Continue on. Let me just make a note of that. Thank you, Gabe. Continue on, please.
Yep. That book, the whole Why Something Matters series, which is done by the Yale Press, it's like why psychology matters, why politics matter, why acting matters. They pick a subject, a noun, in the popular consensus of contemporary culture, and they choose someone who isn't necessarily in the field, but someone who has a very unique, artistic, subjective take on the form. So David Thompson would be first and foremost considered a film critic, but most of the films that he reviews and the meaning of those films, the point of those films are usually revolved around acting in that film, of why that film is important, what the characters more than what the actors are doing, what the characters are saying, what the screenwriter is saying, what the director might be saying. Thompson's way of looking at the multifacetedness of perspective of the literal and the subjective elements of a film, of his own opinions on those facets, and the facets themselves is just endlessly interesting, because some of it is so wordily dense that sometimes it can't be understood at a first read. And I think that's what's interesting, is there's multiple meanings that can come out of his work.
Well, try his take on Psycho. What's it called? That Moment in Psycho. I read that.
In Psycho. Yeah. I mean, he just has such a playful mind, and he's curious. He's genuinely curious, and he has this sort of English refinement, but he also has this real dark, almost like punk rock affinity for lunacy and for anarchy. So his take on acting is much different from what most English scholars of his of his rank or of his status would mostly how they would probably, for the most part, academically look at a film and look at acting. So you have this more complex school of acting that's developed, especially since the 1960s and 70s. In the 1980s, it sort of becomes a standard that you have this deeper form of psychology in film. And of course, into the 90s, you have independent film that blossoms and blooms, LGBT cinema blossoms and blooms. And now today, it's like, Mark, you've talked about this so many times where you've said, there's this whole world of independent, film festival films out there that are out there, but because and they're out there, there's more than ever. Every year there's more than ever, and it's so true. The only issue is that because now of the death of the video store, not the complete death, but because of the fact that chains like Blockbuster are almost
I'm sitting in the middle of one. What are you talking about?
And there's the library. But there's River West Film and Video. There are still independently owned video stores, but for the most part, 95% of video stores that were open 10 years ago, 20 years ago are closed. But they still do exist. So videos, I mean, it's not like some absurd statement to say that video stores are going away. That's a common piece of knowledge. But libraries still offer a service, but the independently owned mom and pop video store, unless it's rallied around by a community like River West, there's ones in Portland, and in major cities. Every major city still has one that's kept almost as a token, where people rally around it because it's something that they like. There's something about browsing, and there's something really cool about it. But because of the fact that seeing these titles and renting titles like that, there's sometimes a lack of exposure to things that aren't necessarily within the viewer's immediate grasp or periphery. So on streaming services, you have this ability. You've got thousands of immediate titles at your whim, but due to the fact that you have 1,000 titles at your command, your likelihood to pick something that isn't within, that is out, that your likelihood of picking something outside of your comfort zone or something that's a little less predictably within your already accrued field of choice or your genre of choice is so much less likely, and of finishing the film is even less likely, because I know I've discussed it with film people and non-film people. Like, they're watching a movie that they're not highly involved in, or that they're not, that into. Their likelihood of finishing it, most people don't finish a movie that they're not into on a streaming service. Some people do, and I just give them all the thumbs up and all the credit for that. That's awesome. But independent film, a lot of it gets either picked up by a streaming service, Amazon Prime, Netflix especially. Netflix it picks up so many films from film festivals now. It's just unbelievable. So it's it's just super. On the one hand, it's super cool.
Hey, are you there?
So on the other hand, the fact that these movies just sort of go into the Netflix oblivion, they just sort of disappear. They, like a movie like Divines, the French film from last year, which is, just an incredible piece of filmmaking, was
Gabe,
hardly seen because it popped up for like 3 days on the Netflix feed.
Gabe,
and then what's up, dude?
My man, keep preaching, because I'm just going to bump my car up because I don't want some maniac to park me in. Martin's going to helmet. Keep going, my man. Absolutely. Give me a figurative minute.
Sure, sounds good. So you have, movies like that you have this they have this avant-garde side or this independent side, and these movies just sort of disappear into the void, into the abyss. And that's not a bad thing, because now you have access to a large audience. There are undoubtedly people that will watch those films that are not your typical audience, or not your typical viewing audience, that will stumble on, or just because of the summary or because of a recommendation, will watch a movie that would normally not fall into their lap. But a lot of times, because of this huge library that is not physical, it's not right in front of you in your immediate visual periphery. It's a scanning bar, and that scanning bar changes based on your preferences, based on your viewing choices, and based on just at the whim of Netflix or whatever streaming service.
Man, Gabe, I tell you, it was wild. I moved that van. Like I said, man, I'm looking out there. I'm looking at these other cars. It's like, how is this person ever going to get out of it? They got this guy parked in, and it's happened to me. Martin Hallinger was kind enough to take the helm. I booked out, got the job done, and some maniac can park 2 inches in front of me, but I got enough room in back to get out alive.
Good work, Mark.
Yeah,
Good
thank
work.
you, Gabe, and thank you for also, again, like I say, I want to shed a little light on your determination to keep the show rolling forward, as you did while that maneuver was being made, and I wholeheartedly thank you.
Absolutely. But I got a little off. Well, I didn't get off track. I just went on a different track. But Annette Bening in 20th Century Women gives a very solid, very sturdy performance. I think it's Dakota Fanning, who's Elle Fanning is one of the other people in that film. And you have these very solid components, and still the film, there's something missing from it. It's not necessarily that there's something missing. It's just unsurprising and unspectacular. But still very good and very well made, and I'd recommend it to a lot of people. Because, Mark, one thing that's hard to keep in mind at times, but I do keep it in mind, in that it's not my perspective, but it's a lot of other people's perspective, is that most people don't need, even if they watch a lot of movies, a movie to be original, thought-provoking, interesting, intelligent, meaningful, enchanting, beautiful, magical, bewildering, challenging, otherworldly, complex. Most people don't want movies to be that way, which that goes against everything that I've accrued in my film sense in the last 5 years. I don't like watching movies more than once unless there's something to gain from a second viewing, unless there's such unless there's just such absolute pleasure, or there was just such absolute intelligence, or there was just wonder. There's something that was so beholden, they're so amazing to behold, that I needed to experience again. It will benefit me to re-experience it. Otherwise, I just feel like it's almost like it's unnecessary to review a film, because it's indulgent at that point. It is simply entertainment. It's not informative. I'm not gaining anything from it as a viewer. I'm not gaining anything from it as a human being. I'm therefore just watching a movie at that point. I'm not gaining anything as a work of humanities, of the human race, as it's no longer becoming an expression of art. It's becoming a pointless exercise in my life. So most people don't want to watch movies for particularly, like these breaking ground reasons, where they're like, this is going to be a new experience, and it's going to be something worth remembering and worth feeling and worth thinking about and worth discussing. Most people watch movies so they don't have to think about their lives. It's just a fact.
Oh, okay.
So, it's just a fact.
Oh, yeah, no, that's interesting that you say that. I've never seen it that way, but obviously everyone lives through a different experience, and so on and so forth. It's amazing that someone would do that as an antidote to their premise, their entire premise. That's off the hook, my man. But I do understand its validation in others.
Yep. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, because you got to keep in mind, most people don't watch movies to look at them as works of art, and that's fine, because it's like most movies aren't art. So there's really nothing wrong with this idea of saying, well, I mean, the majority of the movies you watch are probably, are mainstream, and, like in a bad way, like just, these very predictable films, or just these very predictable exercises, and just these what I would call bad films, in just these ordinary ways. Yeah, like most movies aren't going to move you emotionally. They're not going to change your perspective on things. They're not going to elevate your life like if you look at like a mediocre painting versus a great painting, who's to say, obviously, whether one painting's great and one's mediocre, you could gather 15 painting critics, art critics together in a room, and they would argue about the merits of those two paintings. One saying, well, it is the inferior, it's this childish scribble that is actually the profound work of art for this reason. And because you're looking at one image, you're not looking at this film that is like a more common experience of the human race now, where it's like it follows our ears, it follows our eyes, our senses, and where movies and moving media, which is even is this common thing on our phones, on our telephones that we keep in our pockets, is such a part of the world experience now, that movies are really a central part of it, whereas painting I would put more into the classic humanities or the fine arts now, because of the fact that it's not, painting isn't just something that you have to communicate, or that basic constant entertainment of media on your telephone. There definitely is a separation there. And someone could argue about well, every image is a painting, everything is a painting. Well, yeah, that's great. But the majority, a lot of, and the reason I say that is not my opinion about people watch movies to escape their boring. That's not what I mean. And people's lives are not boring, by the way. No one has a boring life. Everyone is living from point A to point B and doing something. Now, whether they move from a spatial diameter, whether they go in a radius, diameter, circumference, whatever, from point A to point B, whether it's a large distance, in terms of do they go across from one part of the earth to the other part of the earth, or do they go from a 10-feet spot to another 10-feet spot, or do they go from hundreds of feet or miles or hundreds of miles? Do they fly in the air in these pressurized tubes and go from one location to another? Do they drive around in these motorized pieces of fiberglass, steel, and plastic with glass on them? from one location to another? Do their minds go from figurative places to another or literal places to another? Their brains, their souls, their consciousness, their psychology, their whatever, their spirit, their lack of spirit, our bodies of electricity. Now, whether they literally go someplace or figuratively go someplace or not, figuratively or literally, it's kind of irrelevant because we all are alive. So no one, in theory, has a less life force than another. It's our opinion.
My man.
Movies are no different.
What's your Christmas viewing schedule like?
It's funny you say that, Mark, because I can't stand Christmas movies because they fall into this parameter of like mainstream film that I don't want to watch. But there are some good. The thing is that great movies come out in the theater around Christmas time. Great mainstream films like the Oscar bait stuff, the big, like the artier mainstream films, and the really well-made mainstream films come out. The artiest of the art, like the most well-made of the well-made independent films come out. The best pieces of acting of the year usually come out. So Christmas, I mean, this is just great season. Like you said, Mark, The Post, this is just great stuff that's coming up here. Ridley Scott's new film is going to come out on December 23rd, starring Christopher Plummer and Michelle Williams, both of whom are among my favorite actor and actress, and are one of my favorite actors, one of my favorite actresses. This is just great stuff. Ridley Scott in his 80s, just on a roll, just on this. Clint Eastwood as well, just in his later years, just on fire, absolutely on fire. Not necessarily every film a total success. Woody Allen as well, a film a year. There's just something so eager and great about the consistency of making a film, and 2 films a year. In the case of, Steven Soderbergh at times, Steven Spielberg, Clint Eastwood even at times will release 2 films in the same year. Sometimes he'll take a year off and sometimes he won't. So it's like 3 films over the course of 2 years, and then continues on his normal role of a film a year. Woody Allen has had a TV series that he did on Amazon, and in addition to his normal work, there's just such a high output of these guys who made a name for themselves 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or are still making a name for themselves. And they're still putting out just this high caliber, high quality film. They're putting out these high quality films, and I just have nothing but respect for them, even at their their most average or mediocre. We all have our bad, all filmmakers have other films that they make. Steven Spielberg, when he releases 2 films in 1 year, sometimes both of them are bad, and sometimes one of them is great, and one of them is, just more mainstream. I definitely remember the year that he released War Horse and The Adventures of Tintin in the same year, and just the dissimilarity between the 2 films could not have been more striking. I mean, one was a computer animated kids film that could not have been less necessary, and the other was War Horse, which at the same time was, on the one hand, a very well-made World War I film, and the fact that there's fewer World War I films than World War II films by a large margin. But Spielberg just still takes risks and is interested in stories and ideas, and he just likes making films, and he's really good at it.
Speaking of which, 1941, does that take place during Christmas time, Gabe? That's Spielberg's offering from 79. Yes. Do you remember that?
Yes, it does. I do remember that. I've seen it. I'm actually a bigger proponent of that film than most people are. It's a very odd film. It's a strange movie, but it's very good. It has the Spielbergian touch. He claims it to be probably the worst film that he ever made. But I think it's a genuinely touching. I think it's a great movie.
I'd like to revisit that. I saw it when it came out in '79 at the Northtown Cinema on the Northwest Side here in Milwaukee, and that was after Close Encounters and before Raiders of the Lost Ark. Jim Belushi was in it, so I think it was during his Saturday Night Live heyday or around that time. So it had all the key ingredients, the elements of Spielberg, Belushi, an epic spectacle, and it was a I think a critical and financial no-go. But I
Disaster.
think it did have something to do with Christmas, because it didn't something to do with Christmas lights or a plane hitting Christmas lights or.
Well, there's a scene at the end where the ferry over on is it? I can't remember if it's Coney Island.
I think wasn't it the West Coast?
It's Pearl Harbor. It takes place around the time that Pearl Harbor happened, and then there's a submarine.
Well, I should hope so.
It's
in the title. It's 1941, my man.
Yep. Well, there's a submarine attack at the end that hits the shore, and there's a Ferris, and there's a circus or there's not a circus. So what do you call that?
I mean, it could be the Santa Monica Pier. They've got or had they have a roller coaster.
I would imagine that.
I thought it was because it was
I would imagine that that's what it is.
Yeah, I might be off of that because I thought it was the West Coast around San Francisco or so that there actually was one. But again, this is all very hazy, and you'd have to find out for yourself what's what actually.
The images, the model effects in that film are very interesting. They have this sort of surreal quality to them. The Ferris wheel almost getting destroyed is a very beautiful image. The miniatures effects, the special effects in that movie are outstanding. And it's a very weirdly funny film, and it's very graphic in its upfront take on sexuality and sexual mores, and it's just a very odd Spielberg film. Definitely a must, though, for anyone who's a huge Spielberg fan. In terms of seeing the totality of Spielberg's career, movies like The BFG and The Adventures of Tintin and 1949. Some of these films that would be considered lesser on the Spielberg wagon. Just these minor adventures that he wanted to go on for his own reasons. Kids films. Always would definitely be put in that category of some of the lesser works of Spielberg, but they still have this beautiful impressionistic magic to them. When I was a kid, I loved the film Always from 1989, but definitely upon revisiting it, it definitely is hokey, it's sentimental, it's definitely not his best characterization, but those exciting airplane sequences, the firefighting sequences, the special effects, the adventure, and the romance. It's a beautiful film. It's definitely a must for any major Spielberg fans. But Lou from Brooklyn, one of our biggest fans, I have to tell you, I've been meaning to send him a message on Facebook. So Lou asked us a year ago or so about doing a Clint Eastwood show, which we did. We did do a basic Clint Eastwood show back on April 27th, I believe, of 2015. And we did a large overview of his career as an actor, as a director, his politics and his rugged machismo, his history with other rugged individualist directors of the American New Wave and pre-American New Wave. But Lou was asking about the early Eastwood. Some of this early stuff when Eastwood was becoming a director. And, I directed him to our Eastwood show, which is no longer available since SoundCloud took down all our entire archive history as of before January 1st of this year. But that is not a problem. We've moved on, and you know what? Life is good. So, whatever. And you know what? We still get to archive our shows, and the station exists and life is good. So I'm more than happy about the state of affairs in things regarding to that. But,
good.
But yes, early Eastwood films. Lou, I didn't forget about you. I've watched two of the 7 movies that I wanted to knock down to get my Eastwood early directing list cleared. I want to get it completely cleared. So I've seen all the films that Eastwood's ever directed, but Play Misty for me from 1971, directed by Clint Eastwood, is such an entertaining movie. And it's a weirdly fiercely intelligent film. It's got this real bizarre surrealist underglow to it. And Eastwood gives one of his best performances, and definitely it's one of the strangest movies that Eastwood's directed. And you can see him experimenting. There's definitely this unsure nature to the tone of the film, to the images in the film. But it's because there's such a playful, dangerous, almost uncertain, almost feels psychedelic most of the time. There's like a real dancing of images, and there's a real sort of adventure, almost French New Wave adventure to the editing style of the film. I was just captivated from the minute it was on to the minute it was over. The music in the film is great. The shooting in the film is great. The handheld photography is great. The costumes are just an absolute time capsule of the period. Its low-budget restrictions actually give it it's actually a huge quality of the film. The fact that almost everything feels shot on location, the camera work, the filmmaking has this energy that really made me feel alive. I was watching this movie and I rewound the credit sequence, the opening credit sequence of the film alone, just the mise-en-scène and the fluency of it. I rewound it again. I almost felt like I was watching an action. And all it is Clint Eastwood driving from his house to work. The opening crane shot, helicopter crane shot, tracking shot that zooms in on Eastwood standing on his balcony, staring out at the water on his seaside cliff home in California, is just this beautiful, haunting image. And the fact that it doesn't have a particular meaning, it's just atmosphere, it's just mood, it's just rugged machismo cool, gives it almost gives it more authority and gives it more presence and purpose. And the fact that this movie is the beginning of Eastwood as a director. It's not when he's asserted more depth and more poignance to his characters. But the lead performances by Eastwood and two other actresses are just so well done, because they're understated. There's always a lurking menace behind all the scenes. Even in these scenes of romance where there's montages of idyllic montages of Eastwood in love and wandering through the countryside hand in hand with his lover, and sunsets and hot spring baths and love in the afternoon, there's always this really dark undertone of something lurking and watching. And the fact that the film is about a stalker, a psychotic stalker who cannot be reasoned with, it's a great look at a borderline personality. And there's a great restraint to the violence that's in the film. Eastwood's films, especially the ones that he directs and also the ones that he's acted in, almost always deal with violence. Literal violence, figurative violence, emotional violence, psychological violence. They usually deal with conflict. And the physical inaction or the violent inaction of conflict is usually is both the literal text of his films often and the subtext. American Sniper is probably the greatest example of this. Unforgiven American Sniper and Unforgiven as directorial works are probably the greatest examples of that type of realistic and very hard approach to the effects of violence and the effects of cultures based around a history of violence. But man, Play Misty for me has a payoff in the last 2 minutes that...
Please don't give it away, Gabe. I've yet to see that. I look forward to seeing that.
Oh, you must, Mark.
Let me write that down on my hand and see if we can't get that here.
If you can get it at the library, Mark, and I'm telling you, it's one of those great, almost, it's not a work of, I wouldn't call it a work of art in any, in terms of the storytelling or in terms of the finished product. But man, the filmmaking, just that sense of early 70s presence. So that's just some great stuff there. 71, Play Misty for me, real.
Do you know
stuff.
Checks are being made right now as we speak? Oh, okay.
I did not.
Okay, well, thank you for checking. We're gonna have to look further.
So
that was our man Quinn. He's at the helm right now, and we thank him for his time and looking for that title, and we will continue to look for it and eventually find it.
So that's good. The Eiger Sanction from 75, which is not a great film, not even a little bit of a great film, but another great time capsule of the 70s. Another fun, interesting film that features, first and foremost, great cinematography, probably the best on-site climbing photography in any film. And I'd never heard that that's what this film was known for. All I'd ever heard about the Iger Sanction was that it was cheesy. A lot of people had considered it one of Eastwood's worst films that he ever directed, if not the worst. That it's a clumsy spy thriller, that it's illogical, it's stupid, it's chauvinistic, it's stupid, it's unbelievable, it's pointless, dumb, slow-moving, and that it's just not a remarkable film. All these things are true, but it's still a very entertaining, enjoyable movie. Clint Eastwood gives this he's Clint Eastwood doing the Clint Eastwood thing. The lack of logic and reason throughout the film, there's just head-smackingly dumb moments and lapses in just basic script supervision or directorial oversight. But all things aside, you know what? Clint Eastwood directed a very fun, playful, and great-looking climbing film that has some excellent on-mountain photography. Probably the best climbing footage I've ever seen in a feature film. So, crossed it off the list. A couple more to go. You know, movies like Honky Tonk Man, really looking forward to it. The Outlaw Josie Wales, really looking forward to it. So, Lou from Brooklyn, don't you worry. We didn't forget about you, dude. Also, he had requested Adam Agoyan. So, Mark, that's getting back to our older style of shows where we used to pick directors and stuff like that. Adam Agoyan is just a top-notch filmmaker. At least he used to be. I'd say up until about the Sweet Hereafter, which in some regards could be considered his best film. It marked a sharp turning point in his career and the types of films that he made. But before that, he made extremely avant-garde and unpredictable and very, very bizarre art films. So I think, Mark, that's definitely show material right there.
Nice. Adam Agoyan?
Yep.
Yes. What was it's with Exotica.
Exotica, I've never seen it.
Yes.
Speaking Parts, Exotica, Speaking Parts, The Sweet Hereafter, which I've seen, and then there's like 2 or 3 other films that precede that. Mark, you might be in luck because I believe Zav has the Adam Agoyan collection at River West Film and Video. So there's like
where may that be located?
Yep, there's like 4 or 5 films that are in that collection, and I can't remember what they are, but that's a filmmaker that has always been rated extremely high in the markers of experimental film and independent film, and most of them I just have not gotten around to. So I'm just going to, those are films that have to be seen and have to be knocked off. Mark, as another continuum, that book that you and I have talked about on the show many times, Hollywood Animal by Joe Esterhazy.
Yes.
Well, I was at a pawn shop the other day, and I was browsing through the DVDs and the Blu-rays and stuff, and there's stuff that's like $1 to buy, like buy a DVD for $1. So I'm looking through there to see if there's any movies that I've wanted to see. I'll buy them just to see them because they're not available on streaming services, or I'm not going to remember them. I'm not going to run into them. I'm probably never going to see them if I don't accrue them here. So
wait a second, my man.
I run
is
into.
Is the story's continuing? I just want to make sure. Is this now? We're going to get around to that Joe Esterhazy book, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I am all ears, my man.
Yep. So the Betrayed from 1988 with Tom Berenger and Deborah Winger, which was written by Joe Esterhazy. I read about this movie. What was it now? Like 6-7 years ago. There it is, sitting right there. Betrayed for I'm sorry, not $1, 50 cents. I picked that up so frickin' fast, and I went home with that. American Dreams from 2006 as well. I picked that one up. So that's the first entry in Leonard Maltin's book, 151 movies that you probably haven't seen but should. Number 1, first movie in the book listed number 1 on page 1 is American Dreams from 2006. It is just a cutting, biting, scathing, hilarious send-up and satire of American television culture, both in the 2000s and as it still exists today. It just viciously, but also entertainingly, pulls apart the seams at reality TV shows like The Voice and The X Factor and American Idol. Just a glorious send-up of American television culture. Very thoroughly enjoyed. Chris Weitz, who wrote and directed it and produced it, is one half of the comedy team behind Paul and Chris Weitz, who wrote and directed Ants from 1998, the comedy that preceded A Bug's Life and is vastly superior to it. And also, most notably, American Pie from 1999, which was their big breakout hit that got them into Hollywood and kept the doors. In fact, the doors are still open. Paul Weitz is still a notable writer, director, and filmmaker. So very cool stuff on that front. 50 cents bought at a pawn shop, American Dreams, and then Betrayed, which is a very well-made film by Costa Gavras, the Greek filmmaker who emigrated to the States and made political thrillers. Continues to make political thrillers, but he's a very interesting filmmaker. Occasionally he goes back to Greece and makes Greek films, political thrillers over there.
Yeah, I saw Missing at the Theater with Jack Lemmon. I think that was like the early 80s.
82, yep.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, Gabe, because I was thinking about many things here. Did we ever get to the correlation with the Joe Esterhaas book?
Well, Joe Esterhaas wrote Betrayed.
Gotcha.
So that was just like, that was a screenplay that he writes about the process of writing and selling Betrayed and how it came to the incarnation that it takes on screen, and how he was pretty happy with how Costa Gavras developed that film. And he also always states that Costa Gavras is the best director he's ever worked with, who's understood the relationship between a director and a writer. The writer comes up with the story and the dialogue and the film. The director creates a visual interpretation of it. So when Costa Gavras went on tour and did lecture tour, and people would be like, "How did you develop the characters for this film and that film, and how did you decide on creating this nuance of that in the subtext?" He goes, "I didn't do that. The screenwriter did."
That is amazing, Gabe. And what's equally amazing is that we have run out of time, and this is the point where I thank you wholeheartedly for your spirit, your knowledge, and your dedication to this craft of radio play.
Mark, thank you very much. If you can, Mark, I'm telling you, play Misty for me. It's a fun film. You won't regret it.
I certainly will not. Gabe, have a great night, my man.
Thanks. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you.
All right, Gabe Van Handel on the scene. Just a great compatriot in this enterprise. And I did get some news here over the wire regarding film, but regarding American Pie, actually. It's very interesting, but we have run out of time. We will be on at the same time next week on WXRWLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. To hear past episodes, visit riverwestradio.com/shows and click Cinema Fireside.